January 10th.
Governor, has the president said he wants to meet with you tomorrow?
We haven't had any contact with the White House as of this moment.
Can you explain a little bit about your relationship, because you cooperated very well as First Amendment fires? What happened here?
You have to ask him. We invited him out here. I'm glad he's coming out here. I'm grateful that the president is taking the time. I hope he does take the time to listen to the folks impacted directly by these wildfires. I hope he has a chance to visit the folks in Altadena, not just in the Palisades. And I hope he comes with a spirit of cooperation and collaboration. That's the spirit to which we welcome him. I've said this many times: open hand, not a closed fist. And I will reflect on the frame of your question. We had a great relationship during COVID, well established, well defined. I don't think there was a Democratic governor in the country that worked more collaboratively with the President of the United States. That's my mindset when it comes to emergencies and disasters. No politics, no finger pointing. We're going to have the backs of the people in this state, and I hope the president comes back after his visit tomorrow and is here for not just the short run but the long haul.
So Governor, the legislature said that it was poor form on your part to establish a special session of the legislature before he even took office to Trump-proof the state, that sent a bad message.
Well, the Trump-proof is someone else's words, not ours. I think it was rather prescient. We're already engaged in lawsuits in litigation. He already is assaulted the 14th Amendment as a birthright citizenship. I think there's a likelihood of additional lawsuits as it relates to some of his executive actions, and we didn't have time to wait past his prologue. Not just my administration, which was just 2 years working with the Trump administration. The Brown administration had 2 years working with the Trump administration. Total, there was 122 lawsuits. We didn't initiate those lawsuits. They were in response to actions by the Trump administration. I thought it was important that we prepare for that, and I think by definition that preparedness has put us in a position where we can quickly move with the Department of Justice to assert ourselves against the backdrop of an assault on a lot of hard-earned progress here that goes back to Ronald Reagan, goes back to the 60s and 70s and 80s. So you could do both things at the same time. Nothing personal. It's just reality and being prepared and having that experience.
How is it not, Governor, how is it not personal? We've heard, you just described him as an assault, putting an assault on the 14th Amendment. We know that yesterday in an interview, President Trump said that you are responsible for not bringing water down from Northern California to Southern California. Is it possible to isolate this, to isolate the fires, and to have a relationship and a dynamic with the president to help resolve this? And are you worried about the federal government not reimbursing the $2.5 billion?
Well, it's not. You have to ask him that question. Not personal for me, any of those things. It's just fundamental policy disagreements on birthright citizenship. But on emergency preparedness, emergency management, there should be no daylight between federal administration and state and local representatives, and that's the spirit that defines today in the $2.5 billion, bipartisan. You had not just Tom Lackey, you had a number of other Republican representatives here, and we're grateful for them. We were there, their colleagues were there for other more conservative colleagues in more conservative parts of the state, up in Paradise and Campfire, and never even thought about it, never thought twice about that. So none of this is personal in any way, shape, or form. But it's some people want to politicize things. That's just not our approach. And as it relates to reimbursements, I have all the expectation and belief that we'll be reimbursed for these dollars, and that we'll have the support of Congress and the President of the United States. I absolutely believe that.
What about some of the concerns about the president saying that there should be limits on the funding for California unless the state does some sort of water?
Well, it's some sort of that is confusing to not just you, but to every expert and everyone that's tried to review it. The State Water Project has nothing to do with the fires here. Nothing. Period. Full stop. It's not he said, she said. This is not just an assertion. It's a foundational fact. And I think it's really important in terms of how we express the reporting here that we deal not just with both sidesism. The State Water Project has nothing to do with water supply as it relates to water suppression for municipal systems. The state reservoirs are at or near record highs, and the issues around the Endangered Species Act have been issues that have been litigated and adjudicated and politicized for as long as I've been alive. They're not novel to this administration. They go back to the George H.W. Bush administration and litigation and lawsuits. So again, that's why I take none of this personally. I just, with respect, think it's incredibly important that people know the truth, because it's very damaging when people believe such misinformation. And I don't mean it in a malign sense. Maybe the president just doesn't know that there's not a spigot that can be turned to solve all the water problems that he alleges exist that don't exist as it relates to the state water system here in Southern California.
So we're less than 24 hours away from his visit. You're saying you haven't had any contact with the White House at all?
Well, I haven't. I'm grateful, though, that he took our invitation to heart and that he will be here tomorrow. It's my understanding. I look forward to being there on the tarmac to thank the president, welcome him, and we're making sure that all the resources he needs for a successful briefing are provided to him. There's no limit to the resources we'll provide for that briefing, and as I say, I'm grateful that he appears to be coming out.
Plan on talking to him tomorrow?
Well, I certainly plan on being there at the tarmac and look forward to continuing to work not just with him, the administration, as it relates to the disaster recovery, as it relates to our efforts to collaborate with multiple federal agencies over the course of the next many years as we organize our approach to immediately address the debris removal. We're working now with the Army Corps of Engineers. So there's a direct relationship to debris removal in the Trump administration, and to make sure that's done effectively, not just quickly, but effectively, and making sure it's done safely, and to make sure that we move heaven and earth as it relates to waiving permits and making sure we break down every barrier for recovery so people can move quickly to reestablish their lives.